It is 7 o'clock.
Emma Allen.
So let's go ahead and get started. And since we don't have a lot of business to conduct, I think I'll just, everybody got the minutes right when they were mailed out.
They were attached to this latest email. Okay. Carol, I'm going to mute everybody and then unmute yourself, okay?
Yes, that sounds good.
Okay.
I have no idea how to do that.
You'll have to unmute herself.
Yes. Okay.
Okay. I have unmuted myself, so we will proceed. And can you put the minutes up on the screen just in case there's anybody that wants to peruse them? I didn't find any additions or corrections.
You were all sent to.
Potentially I can. I don't know if I've.
Okay, well, don't worry about it.
Yeah.
You got the minutes in your email. So is there any additions or corrections to those minutes? If not, they'll stand admitted as received. And then the treasurer's report, Devonna, you unmute yourself. Okay. You had a few additions.
I had additions this month.
You'll do that.
We've received, well, I think in the original one, the first 2 people were there, but I've gotten 4 more. So we've got a total of 6 paid memberships this month.
Okay, very good. We still have
So for a total of 38, 46, 37.
Okay, thank you very much. Are there any additions or corrections or questions for the treasurer? Okay, yes, Jenny?
How many members total do we have now, Devonna paid?
You have to ask Richard that.
Oh,
He's the membership chair. I think it's 25. It may be 26. I actually went back to try and put 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 down, thinking, why didn't I do that to begin with? Because I have to count them. And I can't remember what I came up with. It was 25 or 26 paid
Well,
memberships.
check with Richard.
I will shoot you an email because I received, I think, 3 new ones today
Right.
from Devonna.
Oh, okay.
Actually, you got, I first sent you the 2, and then I got my mail and I had to put another one on there. So, okay, I'm gonna mute myself.
Okay, so our treasurer's report will stand as she corrected it, and it'll be filed for audit.
Hey, Carol, can I ask you a question real quick?
Yes, yes,
Okay, Devonna, did you happen to get mine in the mail this week?
yes, she did. She
did?
reported it to me, yes.
Okay, thank
Yeah,
you.
I got it and I put it in the bank.
Okay, that's fine. That's fine. Thank you.
Yeah, I did get yours. Thank you, Cindy.
And we still have a few of our older members that have not renewed. So if you have any questions, ask Devonna or Richard and send them in. We appreciate it. So, okay. We will continue on with our program then. Bruce, I'm going to let you start, and it's your show right now.
Unmute. Unmute
Okay, can you hear me now?
now.
And am I speaking loud enough or should I speak up more? I can't hear you, Carol. Are you muted?
I'm getting thumbs up, Bruce.
Okay.
Yes, I am muted. Now I'm not.
Okay.
So, okay, I'll mute myself and your go.
Okay.
Cool. You should see a little microphone with the red line through it down in the bottom left corner if they're muted.
Right. Okay, so I guess we're all set here. And so here's my colleague, Byrick Ellison. And
Okay.
we've been following the redistricting efforts that are going on in the city. So and we have a slideshow. Byrick, you can start it whenever you want.
All right. Can everybody see that?
Yes.
So everything that we're doing got started with the mayor appointing the Race and Culture Task Force. And I hope you all remember what that is. We had Mr. Costa come from the city, the assistant city manager, and give us a whole talk about what they did and their 22 recommendations. And one of the recommendations was that they form a police review committee. And another one was that they form an independent redistricting commission. And so here you can actually see the language right here. They want to look at the role of independent redistricting commissions, review the different commission models utilized in the United States, solicit community feedback on the redistricting process, and make recommendations to City Council regarding amending the city charter to include the formation of an independent redistricting commission. So you don't see the whole document here, but they said they should create a committee to do all this. And that committee, so what happened was the city manager, after they gave their report, the Race and Culture Task Force gave their report in December of 2018. And the city manager, shortly afterwards, about 2 or 3 months afterwards, said that he would support all 22 of their recommendations, including this one, to go ahead and figure out how to create an independent redistricting commission. And shortly after that, the city council pushed back on it. So let's move on and look at what is an independent commission. So an independent commission are a group of people that are separate from the elected officials. So you can think of an independent process as one which should avoid giving the appearance or the possibility of any gerrymandering or creating districts for the advantage of particular politicians to get themselves reelected. So it's nonpartisan, and the commission has to figure out, has to be representative of all the groups in the city and make sure that they're equally represented. So Byrick, keep going, I think. Austin is the only city in Texas that has an independent commission. But there are several other cities in the country, several in California. Syracuse in New York, not too long ago, visited to create an independent commission. So here you see a couple of people. How does an IRC work? In the Austin case, there's a rigorous application process. So first, the city auditor creates a review panel, and that panel makes available an application that anybody that's interested in serving on the commission can apply. And so I think in Austin, there were roughly about 300 that applied in the last census round. So then this panel of independent auditors reads through them and they pick a subset of the most qualified applicants. And then these applicants, then they choose a part of the group at random. In the case of Austin, I believe there were 15. 8 of them were chosen at random. And those 8 get together, see who they are, and choose 7 more to make sure that their group is representative of geographically of the city, demographically, and so forth. So that's how they made their commission. Now, what does the commission do? The commission surveys the city. They have public hearings. where anybody can, geographically distributed in the city, where people can show up and let them know what their concerns are and what their communities of interest are. And then the commission, the IRC, forms a draft plan. They hold another set of hearings to get input, and they create the final redistricting plan. This is all how it works in Austin. And in Austin, the commission creates the plan. The city council doesn't get to make adjustments or anything. That's the plan. And that's how it works. So why is it, we should say, well, why is it important in Fort Worth right now? It's because every 10 years, redistricting comes up. And Fort Worth in the 2023 election is going to go from 8 to 10 council districts. So combining that with the census, it's doubly important that we have an effective and fair redistricting process. Well, when the council pushed back on the idea of an IRC, some of us got together and tried to keep the idea alive. And so we called ourselves Citizen for Independent Redistricting Fort Worth. And we, some of the people, I'll just mention Charles Boswell, a former city manager, Casey Tungett, whose father was very active in the Austin process, Byrick and me, and last, but certainly not least, Fernando Flores, who had been working on redistricting for a long time. So we started getting together and trying to figure out what we could do to keep the idea alive and push back on the council and see if we could get Fort Worth to adapt an independent process. And so we started going and meeting with people. So we met with different democratic clubs. If you recall, I gave a little talk to our group, showing you the city map. Why don't we back up for a minute, Byrick?
Okay.
We met with some city council members, notably Carlos Flores and Ann Zeta. And I think it's appropriate to mention right now that Ann Zeta has jumped in the mayor's ring. She is running for mayor, and two of her platform points are that she wants to bring back the 2 points that the Race and Culture Task Force denied, namely to have a police review committee and also to have an independent redistricting commission. So these two issues are coming alive now with her campaign. So we met with Carlos Flores and Ann Zeta. She, of course, was very supportive of the IRC. We met with Christina Brooks, who is the diversity officer that the city hired. And we met with Dana Bergdorf. She is now an assistant city manager, but Dana Bergdorf was the city staff person that was in charge of the last decade's redistricting process. And she was extremely informative. I'm sorry, we didn't get a picture with Carlos Flores. So let's have a look at what happened. Before we get to that, we had some pictures there. We went and gave talks in Como. We got kind of connected with some of the people in the neighborhood association. The way we got our webpage was we gave a presentation to the League of Neighborhood Associations, and Catherine Kroll is a neighborhood association leader, was there, and she volunteered to create the webpage. She's been a great help. So if you look at the right-hand picture here, where at a LULAC meeting on the north side, you can see the back of my bald head, and the speaker is Fernando Flores. They have those meetings regularly. So go ahead, Byrick.
Okay, let me jump in and tell you a little bit about what we learned from Dana Bergdorf about how the citizen participation process worked last time. The city actually did something that was kind of visionary. For the first time, they welcomed citizen inputs using the same software that the city used to draw the maps. In the last redistricting cycle a decade ago, redistricting software really sort of came into its own. And they had as part of the contract with the vendor, they opened it up to the public to use from online. So the city staff went out into the community and held a series of public meetings in a number of areas all over the community to train residents in how to use the mapping software. And then at that point, you had individuals and neighborhood groups submitting both written comments and formal plans using the software for the staff to use as inputs to their map making process. Now, once the citizens submitted their maps, their formal involvement in the process ended right there. The staff took their inputs and incorporating their inputs and inputs from the council, the staff put together an integrated plan, which they took forward to the community to get public comments on so that they could draft a final plan. And then they submitted that plan to the DOJ for review. Now, going back to that citizens process, there were 9 plans that were developed by citizens. These are complete formal plans, and you're without getting into the details of any of them. The top row up here that you see, these 3 were submitted by residents of the east side. One of them came from an engineer someone from the engineering department within the city, and a couple of plans came from serving members of the zoning commission. The middle 3 plans, all 3 of them were developed by the United Hispanic Council. And then a couple of plans were turned in from the north side residents in the North Fort Worth Alliance area. And then there was one plan from the Stop 6 Sunrise neighborhood. Notably, there were no plans turned in by residents of the west side of town or from the south side of town. Now, some elements of some of these plans actually made it into the final plans. And let me show you an illustration of that. Let's go look at District 4. This is Carrie Moon's district on the east side. You can see the old district from 2003 to 2012 on the right-hand side. That's the previous district. And it's located, it's sort of an L-shaped district that borders Watauga, North Richland Hills, and Hearst. The spine of it is just east of the I-35 corridor, and then it kind of moves to the north-south spine along the I-35, and then it shoots out to the east along the 121 freeway. Now, this was the plan on the left submitted by one of the citizens. And you can see that what they did was they extended it north up to Heritage Trace Parkway, and then they truncated it back. It used to extend beyond the 820. They cut it back to the 820 loop and made some further changes. Now, let's take a look at what the current district looks like. And you can see that except for a couple of changes that the staff made, these 2 plans are identical. What the staff did was they added a little section up here to the north, and they kind of smoothed out some of this jagged area that along the bottom of the I-35 corridor. But apart from that, these two plans are remarkably similar. And so this is the district that most resembles what one of the citizens input. Now, the next example that I want to show you was a big redraw of District 2. This is Carlos Flores's district that extends in the previous district. It extends from the north bank of the Trinity River all the way north to the very north tip of Fort Worth into Denton County, or that's how it was in the previous decade. Now, the United Hispanic Council made some significant truncations here because of the growth of the northern county. And this is what the current district looks like. You can see that there are several features of the United Hispanic Council plan that made it into the current district. You can see this northern boundary feature here. You can see some of this detail around the Trinity River is reflected here as well. All of the plans in the old district and all of the 9 citizen plans had this boundary at the Jim Wright Freeway. The staff basically expanded it and bumped it right up against District 7 in this direction to broaden the Hispanic community in that district. Likewise, we have District 3, which is the West Side district, currently represented by Brian Bird. And back in the past, on the right, the northern boundary was along the I-30. You can see that the citizen plan here, and incidentally, this was drawn by a member of the zoning commission who actually lives across town on the east side, but you can see that they expanded the northern boundary. They also took this area around Benbrook Lake and moved that into Jungus Jordan's District 6. So the current district now, this is the current district, and you can see that it pretty well adopted the northern boundary of the citizen plan, but the staff made some adjustments. They took this area around Benbrook Lake and they moved it back into District 3. And they also extended a little bit of this area between Arlington Heights and Como, which is Sunset Heights, and extended this little peninsula. So you can recognize, these are the 3 plans where you could recognize how the citizens plans fed into the current plans that we have. And oops, I'm sorry, my laptop is just a little bit running away from me. So there are several lessons that we learned from this. Now, like I say, some citizens plans received more weight than the others. The ones that I showed you, they actually reflected the plans that we have currently. Some of the other plans, you don't see their ideas making into the current plan that we have. Also, the citizens plans did not come from the entire community. There was no participation by residents of the west side or the south side. And we really need to see, if they continue this, which the city council intends to do, we need to see more proactive effort to broaden the representation across the city. And finally, the citizens' involvement ended with their submittal of the plans. There was no opportunity for the citizens to participate in the drafting of the integrated plan, which would actually move you closer to the idea of an independent redistricting commission, where you invite people into the same room to hash out their differences and hammer out a single integrated plan. As a result, there was a certain amount of dissatisfaction from the people who submitted plans because their inputs didn't get recognized as they felt. So I'm going to turn this back to Bruce to talk about the Redistricting Task Force.
Yeah, so let me just add one thing about the process that Dana Bergdorf led us through and that Byron just described so well. And that is that it demonstrated that the real citizens could be trusted to really make good maps, to really get involved in the process. And if they could have gotten together and discussed things among themselves, we might have even had a better solution. So let's talk about where we are now with our current task force. When the city manager first said he was going to support all of the 22 proposals, there was a committee that was drawn up to follow up with the plan of the Race and Culture Task Force. That committee never met, and in fact, what happened then is in last August, the city decided that it was going to appoint its own task force to make recommendations to the city concerning the criteria. So the idea of this current task force is that they were very limited in their scope. Their charge was to examine the criteria used to create districts, and we'll be getting into that in a minute, and to suggest procedures for carrying out the redistricting. Now, I think what the city council had in mind by suggesting procedures was certainly not to go so far as to suggest an independent commission. The idea of their process is that the city council is going to actually be in charge of deciding where the boundaries would go. And this group that we have now would only decide what the criteria are. So they had 3 meetings where they discussed their plans and learned about redistricting. And I'll get back to that in a second. And then the chair, Lorraine Miller, who's sitting there at the head chair position on the kind of purple red dress, she made an interim report to the city and about the criteria that they think they should use. But I just want to point out that at each of these meetings, there was the opportunity for public comments. In fact, Byrick and I managed to speak at all of them. We attended all of the meetings at City Hall, but other people spoke as well. And maybe there were 10 or a dozen other speakers. All of them spoke, or most of them spoke in favor of the independent commission, which this task force was trying to ignore. So at the beginning of the first meeting, Ms. Miller said that the Race and Culture Task Force did not propose an independent commission, but only that the boundaries be drawn in a fair manner. And you could see from the text of our very beginning slides that that's not true. They basically did not represent the Race and Culture Task Force accurately at all. Okay, so they had their meetings. At their second meeting, they had somebody, Mr. Costello, from the Austin Redistricting Commission, give a presentation on how that one worked. And you've already seen some of that in our slides. They also had a presentation from San Antonio where they kind of farm out the process to a legal team. That presentation wasn't nearly as good, I'm just mentioning. The person didn't really seem to know all the details because she wasn't there for the last go-round. So they made their interim report, and it was disappointing that in the interim report, they never mentioned once that almost all of the speakers were speaking in favor of an independent commission. Then we had 3 public meetings where they, where they requested citizens to come and comment on what they thought should happen. So there was a meeting on January 11th and another one on January 21st, just conducted in English, and one on the 19th, conducted in Spanish. It might have been a little bit unfortunate that the 19th and the 21st sandwiched the inauguration. But in any case, there were these, on the 11th and the 21st, there were a great many speakers that formed basically into 2 groups. Most of them were in favor of an independent commission, and some of them showed what kind of a process of open meetings they could use that would be very inclusive, that would include all parts of the city, and also that would be very transparent. There would be public meetings like that where everybody could see what's going on. So maybe we're ready to look at the criteria. So these are the 2011 criteria, the criteria for creating the districts in the last go-round where you saw some of the citizens' submissions. And so let's look at what these criteria are. They have to have about equal size in each district. They can't have any packing of minority voters, which means they can't pack people, so all the minority voters, for example, into one district, and therefore their representation on the council would be diminished. On the other hand, they can't spread them around so much that they would have no chance to actually get a minority representation. So the next criteria is no retrogression. That means they can't create districts that reduce the ability of minorities to elect council members. Geographically, the districts have to be compact and contiguous. We'll be getting into that in a minute. And they have to have identifiable geographic boundaries. The districts are not supposed to break up communities of interest. They have to respect them. Now, let's focus very much on point number 7. These are the 2011 requirements, and let's look at number 7. They wanted every district, if possible, to include areas inside 820 and area outside 820. And our feeling is that this was because the economic power of the city was represented inside 820. But we'll see that that has deleterious effects in cracking or reducing minority representation. We'll look at that in a minute or two. The districts have to contain the voting precincts and, if possible, the census blocks or block groups. And the other one that I want you to focus on beside number 10 is that they were supposed to preserve the incumbent constituent relations. What does that mean? It means that if a council member lives in a particular district, you're not going to draw the new district so that he no longer lives in that district. I think we all get that. Well, here's an example. Here are the examples of the inside and outside the loop. The number 7. On the left, you can see the council districts in the last go round with 820 superimposed, and now with the current council districts. And you can see that for the most part, except for District 9, they all include areas both inside and outside the loop. So that kind of explains some of their funny shapes. Let's look at how that shapes up in terms of the minority distribution. Now, of course, we don't have the current census. Hopefully we'll get that sometime this summer. But in 2000, let's look at Loop 820 and look at these different colors. Brown is greater than 50% Hispanic. Black is greater than 50% African American. And the combined, if neither one of those exceeds 50%, the yellow color shows where their combination exceeds 50%. So if you just look at the south side and 820, you can see how Loop 820 divides up minority districts and therefore would reduce their power to elect representatives. You can see that both in 2000 and 2010. I think one thing that we should point out is if you compare the 2000 distribution and the 2010 one, we can see that there is a steady flow of minority population moving to the south of the loop and to the east of the loop. And that's, I think that's still going on more so from my conversations with people in the African American community. So let's have a look now at the current criteria that the task force we have now came up with. And they divided them up kind of artificially, as I'll explain, into two groups, high priority and lower priority. Well, they kept the equal size, the no packing or cracking, the compliance with the Voting Rights Act, creating minority opportunity districts to further reflect the diversity of the city, that they have to contain communities of interest in single districts. A community of interest could be defined as a local population with shared socioeconomic characteristics or political institutions that would benefit from united representation. But I just want to expand on that a little bit. If you were listening to the meeting on the 21st, the public meeting, you would see that there were other considerations for communities of interest. For example, were they all shopping from the same place or from the same group of grocery stores? And of course, the territories have to be contiguous. They can't be split up, and we'll get to see about that in a minute. Now, the first five really they must have those according to the Voting Rights Act. So although they say high priority, there's no way that they can be ignored. They are required by law. The second group, compact districts, identifiable geographic boundaries, whole voting precincts, whole census blocks, and look at number 10, do not consider place of residence of incumbents or potential candidates. These really are the ones where they had discretion. They had no discretion in the first five. So really I think it's very artificial to say they have lower priority. Those are the ones that they really had some say about. Now, as you can see, when they talk about compactness, they actually had a kind of mathematical ratio, this Polsby-Popper ratio, and we'll show you a little bit more about that. One thing to notice, though, is there is no inside-outside rule. And they rejected that. And I think this task force should really be congratulated for getting rid of that and for removing this consideration of residence incumbents. When they were talking about going to 10 districts, during the discussion, some of these task force members said they should start with a clean slate. that was never, that they never adopted that language, but it was refreshing to hear that. There were just one or two other people that, for example, wanted to hang on to the requirement of considering the places of, the residents where the incumbents live. But they voted that out. So I think they should be commended for that. But Byron, do you want to add anything to this?
No, I think you covered it.
Yeah. So we're going to look at some examples now. Are we going to start with compactness or contiguousness?
That's basically the same.
Same.
All right, you want me to take this,
Sure.
Bruce?
Absolutely.
Okay. All right, so we're going to finish up our presentation by showing you, taking you away from the realm of the philosophical and theoretical into the practical of what our districts look like. And I'm going to start with a section of Boat Club Road that you can see. It's about a mile long. It's a very desolate area. There's no houses to either side of it. And this desolate stretch is the thin strand that connects the north and south blobs of District 7. As you can see from this map, oops, this is that section here. And that's this section of District 7 and the south side. And they've run District 2 right up against Boat Club Road. And this basically violates every notion of compactness and contiguity that you'd find in a dictionary. This is a total repudiation of their own criterion, right? And it's one of the extraordinary features of District 7 up in the north, which is represented by Dennis Shingleton. Now, I'd like to show you some features of our directory that are driven by the shape of our precincts. Our precincts are drawn both in Austin and at the county level, and they have to conform to the congressional districts, the state House and Senate, as well as judicial, State Board of Education, and county commissioners. So, and then the county election office has to draw precincts to conform to those. And some funny things happen when you do that. Now, this is what I'm going to focus on, an area of the east side between Meadowbrook and Brentwood Stair Road. And you see how regular and nice and well-formed these precincts are. They're rectangular, straight lines. In 2013, some irregularities crept in, some of them driven by congressional gerrymandering, and who knows what some of these other regions are. But this has implications on the shape of our council districts. Let's look at this area just around Brentwood Stair, where we have this little sawtooth area. Take a closer look at this. This neighborhood pretty much looks like one side is the same as another, but this is the boundary between districts 4 and 5. And if we go and look at it on the ground, you see a neighborhood that's sort of broken up. These houses don't look any different from one another, but this is the effect of this sawtooth by breaking up this neighborhood for whatever reason. I can't really tell. Now, I'm going to focus in on an area that's just a little neighborhood that's just across the street from Eastern Hills High School. Not only is this the boundary between 4 and 5, it's also the boundary between congressional districts 33 and 6. And we're going to zoom out, okay? And District 33 is Mark Veazey's district. On the upper, that stretches from the stockyards to the Dallas Love Field. And this section, which includes about 250,000 people, or no, 500,000 people in southeast Tarrant County, plus a couple 100,000 people in Ellis and Navarro counties. And yet you saw, if you look at this neighborhood, these people who live across the street from each other, they're not only in council districts 4 and 5, but also in congressional districts 33 and 6. So this is a really sort of egregious example of breaking up neighborhoods because of how our precincts are drawn. And with that, we're going to come to our last chart. Bruce, do you want to take this? You're muted, Bruce. Bruce, you're muted.
Okay, can everybody hear me?
Yes.
We have some recommendations, but I want to contrast the Race and Culture Task Force with the current task force. Just want to point out a few other disparities between them. When the Race and Culture Task Force was created, the 4 co-chairs were selected: Andrew Bloom, Lily Biggins, Rosa Navahar, and Bob Ray Sanders. They were appointed, but they built the rest of that task force. There were over 20 people in that task force, and they created their own agenda. The city, they had city staff to help them. In fact, Fernando Costa was instrumental in helping them get everything done. But it was, they were very independent. The current task force is all appointed. Each council member got to appoint 1 task force member, and the mayor appointed 3 of them. They aren't nearly as independent as the first one, and they don't seem to have very much control over their agenda at all. So I just wanted to mention that. Let's look at some recommendations. Well, we really ought to have an IRC. We need to have an independent commission to draw the boundaries instead of council members keeping it in their back pocket, so to speak, and keeping control and trading off to get so that they can continue to get reelected in the same districts, which makes for a much more static situation. You saw what happened with Boat Club Road. I mean, here they said they wanted contiguous and compact districts, but there you had this little string of spaghetti that was part of District 7. So they really need to stick with their criteria. If they have criteria, they need to appoint them. You saw this whole issue of the voting precincts and all the irregularities that adds, as well as the boundary of the city itself. And really, the city ought to be able to address that in some way. The council district shouldn't be so completely under the control of the congressional districts, and there ought to be some kind of I guess discussion or interaction between them. And so here we'd say the city council could petition the county commissioners to break up precincts to get smoother boundaries. Now, Council Member Moon has been, when redistricting was discussed, he said that actually it would be helpful if the boundaries conform to the school district boundaries and actually to the nesting of say, elementary school districts that feed a high school. There was a little discussion of that. Some people said that it was too difficult because we had too many school districts encompassed in our boundaries. But that's something that perhaps could be considered. Byrick, would you like to add, make some additions there? Yeah.
No, I think we've covered it. Shall we call it a presentation?
Yeah. Well, I would just mention that, as I said, 21 people came on, spoke for an independent commission at the last meeting. And it's going to be interesting to see if the current task force continues to ignore them, to ignore all the speakers and their wishes in their final report, which they're supposed to give to the city council in March. I think I'll end with that. Yeah.
Thank you very much, Bruce. You've
Sure.
been very informative for us. I've learned a lot anyway that I didn't know before. I've always wondered, I'm in District 8, used to be in 6. And for some strange reason, when they changed it there several years ago, I was put in 8, but 8 gave up the airport in Burleson in order, I don't know why. That was the only money-making thing she had. Everything else is residential. That was the only thing that brought in money to her district. But anyway, I'm in her district now rather than that other guy. But okay. Any other questions anybody have for them?
Looks like Reed has her hand up.
Reed, unmute yourself and go ahead.
Bruce, are you aware that the League of Women Voters has a committee that's working on this issue?
I'm so glad you mentioned that. And so let's discuss that for just a second. The State League of Women Voters, the statewide organization, strongly supports an independent redistricting commission. I went and we went and tried to get the county organization to support that as well. And the former, they've had a change in their administration, but their former presidents would not do that. They did write us a letter saying that they favored a nonpartisan process, but since the municipal elections are nonpartisan to begin with, that really didn't count for much. But now, finally, I think to a few people that have, thanks to a few people that have really taken this on and become aware of the situation, Janet Mattern is one of them.
Yeah, it's a new committee. It's completely separate from the state issues. It's a committee that is only looking at the Fort Worth issues.
At the local issues.
And they were represented in those 20 speakers that we had.
Yes.
On January 21st. And they were supporting an independent commission, although they didn't get into it very far. And then they had a list of, I would say, suggestions for a process that's extremely transparent.
Yes.
And in fact, there was Mr. Shore, an attorney appointed by the mayor on the committee, had sort of complained that, well, there should be specific criteria that if we want to talk about an independent commission, we shouldn't just do it in general. But the reason we were doing it in general is that we just couldn't get them to consider it seriously for a nanosecond. But in the meantime, I pointed out at that last meeting that in fact, the specific recommendations from the League of Women Voters could feed into a process that an independent commission could follow. And so we'll just have
we should work together because we are definitely on the same page. And I'm on that committee. We beefed it up just recently. And so from maybe only 2 people, I think there's probably 6 or 7 now that are working on it.
Maybe we need to have someone from the league also on Bruce's committee.
Sure. Yeah.
You might mention that, Reed, when you have your next committee meeting.
Okay, yeah,
that would be
in a
good.
couple of weeks, we're going to meet again.
That would be good. Okay.
Madam
Yes.
Chair, I just wondered if there are any thoughts about kind of a public relations campaign to spread as far and wide in Fort Worth all this great information that you've put together and all the work you all have done on this to make citizens much more aware of this situation. And secondly, to make this a real issue in the mayoral campaign and frankly, all the city council campaigns, which would mean trying to get a question about it at least into some, debates, candidate forums, that kind of thing. So have y'all thought about doing those things to keep this rolling and get a decision to get there, to get from where we are to where we need to be?
Sounds like an excellent idea. And I think March and April we'll be asking candidates to come and talk to us. I mean, we're Democrats, but I mean, we're interested in that to see what their views are, of course, and what their stands
How
are.
about the voter's guide? Have they done the questions already for the cities and school boards for the league?
I have no idea, Reed. I don't know. I don't know
Okay,
who's
'cause
on that committee now.
We could, a voter's
On the
guide
board.
question would be appropriate.
That
I'm
would
not
be
on the board
terrific.
anymore.
So, somebody needs to write a letter to the, not a letter to the editor, but an opinion piece for the Star Telegram about this.
There was an
Bruce.
article. There was an article in the Star Telegram. Mark Dent was the reporter. I think I might have met him. I'm not sure, but it was a pretty good article. It featured Fernando Flores, discussed the independent redistricting, even though they ignored us. And they also, of course, mentioned Ann Zeta and her platform.
Let me point out that Kat Kroll shared our website with you in the chat page. If you open up your chat, our website is www.citizensmapfw.org. And that's Citizens Map, not Citizen Maps. But we do have that website, and we also have a Facebook page. If you look for Citizens Map on FW on Facebook, or Citizens for Independent Redistricting Fort Worth, you'll find our Facebook timeline there as well.
Looks like she's also included a postcard that you can print out at home.
Yes.
That's right, on our webpage.
Yeah, yeah.
And the webpage has a lot of information about the Austin process. For example, the application form that people had to fill out just to apply to be on that commission. So it gives you some idea that it's not just a good old boy process by any means.
You're lucky to have Kat on your committee. She's an awesome graphics person.
she's awesome.
She's my
awesome in
computer
many other
guru.
ways.
Okay, any other questions for the presenters or anyone else? If not, I will adjourn the meeting, and we appreciate all of you in attendance and look forward to February when we will be having, I'm brain dead.
Jim Riddlesberger.
No,
No.
the guy from Hood County.
Chris Tackett?
Chris Tackett. Yeah, Chris Tackett will be our
Well,
speaker.
he's going to be doing
I am
the
sorry.
women's
Yes, you're
club.
right. No, you're right.
But I'd like to ask a question, if I might.
Sure.
What do we have candidates scheduled at our meetings?
March and April. Was
But
what
are they scheduled?
Yeah,
There are quite a few candidates now.
I know.
Just
So we'll have another board meeting and decide, I know we want mayors, and
Sure.
there'll be a couple of couple of districts that we want that
Good.
represent the areas that we're in.
Yes,
And so we'll be working on that. So,
sounds good.
okay.
Thank you.
Anything else?
Thank you for this opportunity.
Carol,
Yes.
just one other quick thing, and there's way too much information to go into, but State Democratic Party is moving on several fronts. We will soon lose Manny Garcia and Cliff Walker as our director and executive director, deputy director. But Hannah Robeck, who directed the convention, the successful virtual convention, will be the interim director. And there is a I think that will ultimately be a very successful review committee that both Imad, Salim, committee man for SD10, and myself, we're both on it. And that's going to come out with recommendations about what happened, what went wrong, and for a lot of races, Democratic races statewide in Texas. But more importantly, how we're going to fix it and how we're going forward, and what's the plan, what's the game plan to strengthen the organization and, you know, turn the state blue. So anyway, lots of other stuff going on. Legislative also, if you intend to testify at the legislature, you're going to have to be there in person. You will not be able to do it virtually. So anyway, that's it.
Libby, has there been any talk of maybe replacing Hinojosa?
Let's just say that I'm aware of folks who are warming up to run in 2 years.
It's time. He needs to retire. He's
Yeah,
been a good one,
yeah.
but you know,
Well,
maybe
anyway,
to pass
yeah.
his knowledge on to someone else. But anyway, okay. Anyone else? For those of you that are also members of Tarrant County Democratic Women's Club, our state convention will be virtual in February. You can go on their website and it's $30 to sign up, and it's like Friday and Saturday. So it'll be also Zoom. So check that out. $30, get Tarrant County represented at the state. We're the largest women's organization in the state of Texas. So we got to get the women in there too. So anything else? I call the meeting adjourned. Thank you all very much for coming.
Thank you.
And I welcome the new members. I see several that are there. So welcome.